Welcome to Sex Afflictions and Porn Addictions. I am your host, Craig Pera, the founder of the Mindful Habit System. And for the past 11 years, we've been helping men struggling with compulsive sexual behavior, also known as sex addiction and porn addiction. And my own journey through hell and back brought me here. And it is a privilege to be for you listening. Welcome to this podcast. The goal of this podcast is to help you create healthy sexuality and a great life. Today, we are going to talk about imposter syndrome, and this one hits really close to home. You may have noticed, if you've been following the Mindful Habit in this podcast, that I have not podcasted in a while. Now, I have a host of excuses. Busy with clients, working hard, prioritizing family, prioritizing self-care, navigating medical challenges successfully. Might I add, there is a list of excuses. And taking good care of my dog. Hey, Rob, what's up, my man? Hey, listen, if you guys want to join us live and you're listening to this later on, follow me on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or Twitch even. Yeah, welcome. Glad you are here. I love doing these live streams, and I'm really excited to be talking about imposter syndrome because despite all those excuses, there is one that is like on the deciding factor. And it was feeling like an imposter. And let me tell you, listen, this is a very, very natural occurrence for someone who struggled with sex addiction and porn addiction. They have this feeling that deep down inside, if anyone saw the real them, they would see a worthless piece of shit. So this imposter syndrome is endemic, is part of the experience of doing things that make us feel shame. If people only knew where my mind went, if people only knew my thoughts, if people only knew what I did, they would reject me. They would abandon me, and they would see the real me. And they would see a worthless piece of shit. Now, that is not untrue. I certainly do not feel that way, but I noticed something very interesting happen. The past year has been incredible for me personally, professionally. We've grown. We've entered into a partnership with one of the leading education providers to urologists and physicians. Grand rounds in urology. So I had the privilege of speaking at the 2022 Advancements in Men's Health Conference. They flew me to Montana. We had wonderful meals. We broke bread with brilliant people. But guess what? I was the only non-physician there. I was the only non-physician on the panel. And I felt so good, right? Because we have different parts of us, we have to acknowledge the different parts of us that were present. There was one part of me that felt, oh my God, I am being embraced by the medical community. A life coach with a law degree is being asked to speak. And by the way, I had more time than anyone else. I had by far the longest presentation. I had an hour and a half allotted for my address, and it was a keynote address. I didn't know that until I got the agenda. I looked at the agenda and I saw keynote. And I said to myself, what the fuck am I going to say to these people? What am I going to do? How am I going to impress them with my science? What if I get the medical questions? I can't do the medical questions. I rose to the occasion, finally realized, stay in your lane, do what you do, talk about what you talk about. And I built an address on the how to treat pornography, the different schools of thought regarding treating pornography, and how I see the future more of a mindful habit and the internal family systems model versus treating this part of you like diseased. And so it was a wonderful presentation, very, very well received, but there was this subcurrent of being an imposter. There was an undercurrent of not being good enough and that I didn't belong there. And yeah, they gave me the most time and they, maybe they felt bad for me. Maybe they, didn't know what to do with me. Maybe they had all that extra time. And then later on, I learned at the presentation, one of the doctors like, I asked for extra time. I did not get it. And here you are. Well, aren't you fancy? So yes, part of me felt good. And another part of me felt like an imposter. And I suffered from imposter syndrome. And I am certain that impacted my goal of putting myself out there and sharing what I share with you on these podcasts. I was suffering from imposter syndrome. So today we're going to talk about the types of imposter syndrome. I found this great article on Very Well Mind. I'm going to put that in the chat for those of you who are listening now, and later on, I'll put this in the comments or wherever I need to put it, wherever you're listening to me in the future. So what is it? Imposter syndrome is an internal psychological experience in which one believes that they are not as competent as others perceive them to be, as if they are a fraud. Hello? To put it simply, imposter syndrome is the experience of feeling like a phony. Who here feels like a phony in some area of your life, despite any success that you have achieved in this area? Okay? It's not a diagnosable mental illness. You might have imposter syndrome if you find yourself consistently experiencing self-doubt, even in areas where you excel. Imposter syndrome may feel like restlessness and nervousness. It may manifest, at least where it does for me, negative self-talk, and symptoms of anxiety and depression often accompany imposter syndrome. And for those of you who have been listening, you know at the root of this problem, self-care, self-love, self-esteem. Right? How you feel about yourself. People who feel good about themselves don't lie. Don't internalize shame. Don't numb, cope, and escape. Right? They've got tools. The thing that I've learned is that responding to the imposter syndrome is not a one-time event. This isn't this where, okay, look, I go to therapy and I've conquered my demons. I'm done with therapy, and now I no longer am going to have imposter syndrome. I am no longer going to have issues around self-care. I'm always going to feel good about myself. I'm not going to experience stress, fear, and anxiety. Now, of course, when I say it that way, you realize that is preposterous. That is preposterous. Yeah, use big words like them. Maybe you don't have the education that someone else has. That's a big one. Maybe you don't have the years of experience that someone else has. So, and I'm just going to get to the punchline. Treating imposter syndrome is a process. Okay? Meaning it is not a one-time event. It's not as if you cross the finish line and you no longer ever feel like an imposter. In fact, you will. If you're living your best life, you're going to be in new challenges. You're going to be having new experiences. You're going to be doing things that you've never done before. For instance, me lecturing at a physician's conference. And when you're there, in the stress, in the anxiety, also known as fear, you will feel like an imposter. So what's important for you, for me, is to develop your imposter syndrome protocols. Right? What do you do when you experience imposter syndrome? Because if you let it, it'll suck you in. You'll begin to believe your negative thinking. Believing your negative thinking is what brought you to this podcast. So we've got to counterbalance that. We've got to counterbalance. We've got to recognize that that is a natural phenomenon. And it's even more natural when you're connected to maybe things that you've done in the past that make you feel bad about yourself. Maybe every time you're experiencing fear, stress, or anxiety, through your head rattles the Rolodex of every transgression that you've ever had. Right? That's what happens to me. Every bad thing that I've ever done, that's where they come at that low point. Right? That's a version of imposter syndrome. So, what are the different kinds? I connect with probably all of these. The perfectionist. This type of imposter syndrome involves believing that unless you are absolutely perfect, you could have done better. You feel like an imposter because your perfectionist traits make you believe that you're not as good as others might think you are. Here's the expert. The expert feels like he's an imposter because they don't know everything there is to know about a particular subject or topic, or they haven't mastered every step in a process, right? Because they're the expert, but they don't know everything. Who does? The natural genius. In this imposter syndrome type, you may feel like a fraud simply because you don't believe that you are naturally intelligent or competent. If you don't get something right the first time around, or if it takes you longer to master a skill, you feel like an imposter. There's two more. The soloist. It's also impossible to feel like an imposter if you had to ask for help to reach a certain level of status. And listen, all these symptoms, like you want to ask for help to reach a certain level or status. You want to talk to somebody who's reached that level or status and ask them, what did you do? How can I do better? How do I get there? Right? So this counters your ability to get the results you actually seek. So that's the soloist. Here's super person. This type of imposter syndrome involves believing that you must be the hardest worker. You must do more than anyone else to reach the highest levels of achievement possible. And if you don't, you are a fraud. You are a fraud. I had expert imposter syndrome, the perfectionist imposter syndrome, not the natural genius, because I know I was blessed with some skills in that analysis department. I did not experience the soloist. I certainly didn't experience the super person. So what type of imposter syndrome are you? And I noticed Rob in the chat didn't realize perfectionism. Yep. So what are the characteristics of imposter syndrome? An inability to realistically assess your competence and skills. Chronic self-deprecation. Chronic self-loathing. A deep internalized belief system that at your essence, your center, your soul, that you are not good enough. Other characteristics of imposter syndrome is when people attribute your success to external factors. Oh, it's because of them. It's because of that. And let me tell you, right? So if that's you, if you attribute your success to external factors, I bet you also have a problem receiving compliments. Right? What's your, oh, great job. I really appreciate the hard work you did here. What's your reaction to a compliment? Great job listening to this broadcast. I know you have a lot of things to do in your day. You're prioritizing self-care, learning about yourself. Congratulations. Yeah, well, I wouldn't be listening to this if I didn't have a problem, if I wasn't an addict, if I wasn't a loser. So not only do you need imposter syndrome protocols, you need, what's the word I'm looking for? You need gratitude protocols or compliment protocols. So for example, when somebody compliments me, and I'm blessed to receive a host of compliments, for helping people. Makes me feel really, really good. It feeds me. That's how I feed the right wolf. What I used to do, someone would say, "Oh my God, Craig, thank you so much for changing my life. I wouldn't have gotten here without you. I feel so blessed and privileged to have found you." Oh, no, listen. Listen, I just pointed you in the direction. You did it. It's no big deal. I would have dismissed it. I would have rejected it. And then this is a long time ago, someone said to me, "Who the hell are you?" Not with this tone, I'm embellishing a little bit. "Who the hell are you to take away what I'm saying? Am I not a competent adult? Do I not have an opinion that is of worth and is of value?" So it clicked in me through the other person to not diminish their experience. Then I came to internalize it. So when I receive a compliment today, I put my hand on my heart, I receive it, I repeat it to myself, I pause, I look back in the eye, and I say, "Thank you. Thank you." None of the, yeah, ooh, yes, nah. Thank you. Thank you. So those are my gratitude protocols or compliment protocols. And I invite you to find your own so you take that in. You need to take in the negative to get better. You don't have to own it. You don't have to dress up in it, and drown yourself in it like we do with imposter syndrome. We also need to take in the positive, right? Success begets success, right? You've got to focus on the positive, and so many of you are here because you are too focused on the negative. So you berate your performance. You fear that you won't live up to expectations, that you're overachieving. Sabotage. Hello, who's got a saboteur part? Raise your hand if you have a saboteur part, and we're going to talk about the saboteur part on this broadcast. Not exactly sure when, but you will see that even the saboteur part is a part trying to meet needs, because there are no bad parts. Remember, there are no bad parts. Even your addict, even your liar, even you're not good enough, even the critic. What else about the imposter syndrome? Another characteristic is setting very challenging goals and feeling disappointed when you fall short. So this is something that I think all of us agonize over. And so many of us are anchored or tethered to our worst behaviors. And it is why many experts, therapists, and for example, members of the American Society for Sex Educators, Counselors, and Therapists say one of the primary criticisms of the sex and porn addiction model, and there are a number of legitimate criticisms. That's an important for you, so you can take a buffet. You can take what works for you and you can put aside what doesn't. But the long-term identification as an addict is very similar to people who struggle with chronic pain. They go to chronic pain groups, they track their pain levels, they pay attention to the pain, they're focused on the pain, focused on sobriety, rewarded for sobriety, talking about sobriety. Well, those people with pain, where pain sits at the center of their universe, guess what science tells us? They experience more pain. They experience more pain. And so the long-term identity as an addict versus a man who prioritizes sexual health, for many people, will keep them stuck, will keep them anchored in like an inflamed imposter syndrome, right? This constant reminder of their greatest failures. So you take what works for you, you throw away the rest, and do whatever you need to do to help you be your best self. So there are a couple of very specific tips to help people who are struggling with imposter syndrome. At the root of imposter syndrome, remember, is an innate belief that you are not good enough, that you are a fraud. That if people saw behind the curtain, behind the mask, they would see this you, the you that you hate. And that is the problem that you are trying to solve. How you feel about a part is how you feel about a self, about yourself. How you feel about part of you is how you feel about yourself. So recognize your limitations. Recognize growth opportunities. Celebrate those growth opportunities. But don't incessantly beat yourself up. Free yourself from the identity of being a worthless POS. Learn to love yourself through action and deed. Self-care rooted in self-love is such an important part of the problem. One last thing, and this isn't I guess this is a commercial for the Mindful Habit. Parts work. Parts work, parts work, parts work. I can't begin to tell you. And I've been doing parts work now for 11 years. And about 4 years ago, discovered the internal family system. And there's so much alignment. I have come to the firm conclusion that parts work is the future gold standard of psychotherapy. It is critical to change your relationship with the imposter, right? Because the imposter wants you to not be an imposter, right? What is it about that imposter part? Who is it, right? Why does he act like that? Where did he come from? What job is the imposter part doing? So if you have the basic pieces of how to speak to these parts of you, to understand that these parts of you are doing a job, and that job has been a trained, conditioned response, most of these patterns going back to childhood. So the saboteur is a protector. The liar is a protector. The imposter is a protector. Liar, addict, anger, defensive, shutdown part, all protectors, all parts trying to meet needs. So if you are struggling in your journey to get control of these parts, consider first getting the book No Bad Parts by Dr. Richard Schwartz. It'll completely change your perspective on how you think about your addict part. And check out the Mindful Habits Core Training Program. Check out the group intensive if you are in need of a serious intervention. Parts work is critical. Why? Because the imposter syndrome part is not going away. There's no magic dust that we can sprinkle, and no amount of work and therapizing is going to eliminate the reality that you're going to feel like a fraud. You're going to get triggered again. You're going to be tempted to lie again. You're going to feel low again. This isn't about getting rid of those parts. Now listen, with the hard work, they reduce in frequency. They don't come up as often. They reduce in severity. But life is hard. So if you have a framework for doing parts work, and that could be with an internal family systems therapist, that could be through other programs that they have out there, or the Mindful Habit System. Or the Mindful Habit System. Thank you, Nathan. I'm so glad that you like Core Program. I've been really, really happy about being the guy delivering those webinars. Thank you, thank you, thank you for those kind words. So visit the website, www.themindfulhabit.com. Check out the Core Training Program. That's our intro level program, and teaches you the essential elements of the Mindful Habit System, which includes parts work. And we talk about those parts in that webinar call. All right. Well, thank you for listening to Sex Afflictions and Porn Addictions. I look forward to seeing you next week, possibly even before then. We're going to be talking about Fuck It Guy. We've been talking about this in the group coaching program, and I think we touched on it on our Wednesday core training program. Fuck it guy is the part that typically people associate with it when you're on the cliff, when you're looking over the precipice of doing something that you know you don't want to do or you know is going to make your life worse. Fuck it guy is the pusher, right? Pushes you over the edge. Pushes you over the edge. That part, like all parts, are important. That part, like all parts, are meeting needs, and understanding that part will bring you great value. So I look forward to talking about him next. Thank you for joining me. Make it great. Be awesome. Embrace your power of choice and feed the right wolf. Have a great day, everybody. And for those joining me live, Rob, Jewel, have an awesome time. Peace and love, man. Bye-bye.